Hello, friends and patients. I'm glad to join you again after another trip to Tanna Island. This installment is number 6, and that is Dr. Spann and Keri in July 2019 in Whitesands, Tanna. This slideshow we're going to call Passing the Rope. You see in this photo that I have Brother Don Stewart, pastor of Sherwood Hills Missionary Baptist Church, and Matt Van Dyke, his assistant pastor and the lead mission pastor on Tanna, who are sitting to my right. You see Joseph Casal from Nanumian Church to my right, and in the foreground you see Marcel's back as I'm trying to discuss with them, due to Brother Matt and Brother Don's teaching on the nature of the church, the need that they had to have a missionary come from a New Testament church, and thankfully one from Australia had presented itself with these two men in leadership. So this year they invited us back to a mission seminar where the theme was the King's Highway, so those of us that spoke had to wear crossing guard reflector vests. Mine was about 4 sizes too big. And I got to talk to them about a subject that I love called Only Luke is With Me. And it's about the relationship between Paul and Luke during the New Testament mission work that's detailed in Acts, which is Luke's history of the Acts of the Apostles and the Acts of the New Testament Church. So in this, to just give a brief summary, I talked to them about how a layman can change the life even of a highly called pastor who is called to such a high office, and how a layman can serve that pastor and very simply change the world through that servant relationship. One thing that I noticed as I studied and I shared with this group here at Sherwood Hills Baptist Church was that there were 12 words that Paul used after he met Luke that were medical words that Paul had not used in his writings before he met Luke. And they were, as you see there, words that we know such as paragoric, asthenia, costaritiazo, which is the word we use cauterize from, gagliana, which is gangrene, and then igiano at the bottom, which is hygiene. So these were words that show that Luke affected Paul's life and writings and preaching and teaching greatly. At that meeting, the church there at Sherwood Hills put on a great feast and a special night that involved international missions, and one of the rooms was dedicated to Asia or Southeast Asia and Oceania, also Australia. And in that room you see on Tanna Island you have Joseph and Marcel, who are of course the men that you saw in that last picture, and they were praying for them and then praying for the work there on Tanna, which we call Whitesands Tanna Baptist Missions. We take off from Sydney, Australia after that and go to Port Vila, where we then come to Tanna Island after a short plane trip. And as you come across Snake Road, which you see at the top there, and turn to the right, you'll see the scene that we saw. You see that I've misordered my slides and wanted to show you that we catch the plane in Port Vila. There's my wife Keri, in front of her brother Matt and sister Tracy, and we catch that now larger, much more comfortable, faster plane to Tanna Island. When you come over Snake Road and you saw that animated Jeep, if you look to your north, you see a scene that probably was not a lot different than you would have seen 1,000 years ago. You see that large rock outcropping in the middle of your photo. That is where Whitesands becomes North Tanna. And you'll see a photo where Keri and I hiked from Whitesands to North Tanna there. If you look to the south and the east, you see the volcano, and in the distance, Futuna Island can be seen as a very faint shadow just at the left middle part of your picture. That is an inactive volcano, and that is a volcanic cone that you see. Keri and I hope to go to Futuna Island one day because there was a very famous missionary there who was a physician and who preached the gospel through his medicine and through teaching for 30 years in the 1800s. I'm more comfortable in the back of a truck on Tanna, so sometimes I have to ride there, a scene that you might not have seen 20 years ago where a bunch of Aussies or European-type travelers in the back of a truck passing you or stopping at a store. There's always a small miracle, it seems, and I had prayed for needing some plastic bags to label my medicine in because I had forgotten to order them before we left. That is a first, by the way. And sure enough, the first case that I came to when we got to the mission area were 500 of these little bags that we were able to have all of our medicine in to give to the natives and church members there. And we had many to spare, which we brought home so that we can be ready for our next trip. Keri's work involves teaching the ladies and giving them lessons that she's printed out both in English and in Bislama, and she gives them crafts to do to illustrate the lesson. The ladies on the left are Margaret and Susan, which are excellent translators and speak wonderful English. You see, this is her children's class where the children were learning about their individuality and how God loves them individually. You see inside of that building, just behind those children, there's a window, and through that window, if you took a picture, which Keri did, you see that my translator had a mass on his back that I thought was an abscess, and certainly we did some surgery, but it wound up being a mild tumor that we were able to take out, and thankfully the next day he was pain-free and he didn't have to sleep on that knot anymore. This is a case that I couldn't help, but thankfully we're going to be able to make a relationship with surgeons and hospitals in Australia due to this little girl because they need an outlet for their children who have deformities and other problems that are beyond the scope of medical or surgical care in that country. This, of course, is why I go to Tanna, where it seems babies love me more than even any child in the U.S. I love them right back, and this is a photo that we took after church. This is the first church photo that I've ever seen from Tanna. We had just had service in the building to the right of your photo, and for some reason, some of the men raised their hands during the photo. I think maybe it's so that they can identify themselves when they see that back. After our church service and our service in Tabacau, which was once called King's Cross, we took the young pastoral and deacon candidates in a church that might be established over the next 1 to 2 years through Sherwood Hills Ministry on an excursion to Shark Bay, where we went by Mount Yasser, which is their active volcano, which many of you have seen in our other videos. I hope one day, by the way, to snowboard down the side of that hill. As we got to Shark Bay, these young men who live less than 5 miles from that point were for the first time were able to see Shark Bay. There were sharks in the water, but again, as last year, they couldn't be seen because of the glare. There were hundreds of sharks there the day before. It seems that's the case every time, sadly, and none of the baby sharks around the peninsula there. But they had a good time, and they were able to see something that none of the travelers or tourists that I know of have ever been able to go down and see yet, and this was certainly our first time. And the man on the right is the owner of the land. His name is Richard YY, and that's his resort. We got in this day for no charge because I met Richard's mother at the road that goes to this peninsula and bay, and was able to give her a picture of her now deceased husband and myself with my ear on his back listening for a pneumonia. I had treated him and he did well, but sadly 3 years later died from a separate illness. But because of that, and because they were so happy to have a photograph, maybe the only one ever taken of his father and her husband, Richard took us down to this beach where these young men are standing in a hot springs pool that comes out from under that boulder from the volcano. And you see some of our party still back up the beach a ways. When we got to Lonangi, which is the center of the work that Keri and I do there medically, and where I'm able to do some teaching in that small church building in the middle, you see that it's restored after Cyclone Pam to its former green state with no destruction left. They've rebuilt most of the village. This is a part-time village for them where they come down off of the high hill behind that when we're there and at other special times. This is how Keri and I eat when we're in that small white house, and you see here that we have a camping and backpacking stove and backpacking food and other wares, and it serves us very well. This is what a sunrise from that little house on the back porch, if you will, looks like. This was a particularly interesting morning because a cloud was in front of the sun. And then I do house visits on Tanna, and this is one of them. Modric, the son of the Tupanus, which is a kind of magic man or witch doctor named Alimoke. It's his son and my native brother. Asked me to go up on a mountain with him, and he took me up about 500 feet to see this gentleman who could not bend his knees and could not walk. And he had crawled on his bottom from the little house that you see with the dugout directly behind Modric out to that mat where I took care of him and was able to do some injections on him to help him feel better and not have pain, and then instruct his family who sits here in their small village how to get his knees mobilized and how to do some physical therapy on him. And I was able to give the children some balloon chickens, we call them, which made them happy. And on the way back down, happened to see a hog that we might have seen in Arkansas many years ago with his tusk just starting to grow out beyond his jowls. And then later that day when Modric and I got back, all our patients were seen, and I was able to take my wife on a 4-mile hike up the beach and back into North Tanna, which she had never seen before. And I asked her about her experience. She said it was so strange to walk for an hour and a half in that environment up that black sand beach into a different part of the island and never see another living soul. It seems a little bit like being on a foreign planet to me. On the morning we left, this was a sunrise. This reminds me for some reason of Lord of the Rings with the sun bouncing off the inside of that tree. And then as we left, I found another baby to grab onto, and he grabbed me right back. That baby's little cousin rode in my wife's lap, and I caught him at an interesting moment. Just before we left, we got to see Marcel's bungalows that he's built himself with the help of Vanuatu in their community and village for the benefit of that community and village. And we have visitors from Australia, New Zealand, and even the U.S. come and stay in his bungalows. This is the common bathroom and shower area. It's very well done, and I look forward to staying there in the future. On the way out, Keri and I enjoy being able to stay in Sydney, and you see the Harbour Bridge to the left, and of course the Sydney Opera House, which is a world-famous landmark, to the right. It looks like this at night, and we thankfully get to eat a few meals there and see some sights. One of the sights that we got to see for the first time ever was a large humpback whale going out in front of our boat in a number of pods that we saw, and as he went further away from us, we got to watch him breach and make a large splash and wave, and we got to do that for a couple of hours. On the way out, we get to eat one meal that we have come to love, which is a Belgian chocolate restaurant there, which maybe has the only pancakes in the world better than the Rainbow Restaurant in Mountain View, Arkansas. Before we catch the train, Keri caught a picture of me as I'm frequently loaded down, ready to get on the plane. This is how I've become used to traveling back and forth, and how sometimes I have to travel on Tanna, but that's one good reason to run and lift weights. I want you to, those of you that are Christians and believe in prayer and know that God answers the prayers of those who love Him, I want you to pray for several things. One is I want you to pray for the lost and darkened, benighted condition of these natives. This is a relative of mine. This was the woman who adopted me into her family, Ali Moak's wife. She is dead now since 2011. And at the bottom of her tombstone, because of some of the syncretism of Christian missions in Whitesands in the past, you see that there's 3 lines written. And that is that this servant of God belonged to Custom and John Frum, which is a mixture of 2 heathen religions. And then she belongs to Custom Medicine, which is one of the things that she believed that I was involved in and that I've taught against and been very clear about. But she believed that Custom Medicine, which her husband was the Tupanus or magic man for, was part of her religion. And then also you see at the bottom Baptist Church. So they have taken Christianity and added it on to their heathenism. Some of them are coming out of that due to the work of missionaries who've gone back time after time and taught them the truth. I want you to specifically pray for Matt Van Dyke. He is a well-suited and very skillful leader and teacher. Pray for Casal Joseph, who's there to his right. This is a key to the future, and I've been able to hand off for my part what God's let me do on Tanna Island, my work to them. And now I can step back into my servant role and be a layman physician and serve churches and pastors and missionaries that send help there. Pray for these little children. My wife loves them, and they love her right back. You'll notice little Kati has on her American flag skirt, which we love and hope to see again and again. But pray for these little children because they're learning to listen to how much God and Jesus love them, and they've learned how to sing Jesus Loves Me and Jesus Loves the Little Children in several languages. Pray for this young man. This is the little boy. This is Amos. And you see down at the bottom left corner of that photo the beach where I met Amos on 21 years ago. Little Amos was at that time a very ill baby. The hottest skin I had ever touched in my life was there on him because he had pneumonia, and he was in the process of having an illness that might have been unto death. But I was able to give him medicine and take care of him and minister to his family in that village that day. And we still meet each other every time, and I'm still burdened for him. If something doesn't change in Whitesands, that young man will become the magic man and witch doctor for his village and section of Tanna and roll the same stones that this man does. Ali Moak, who sits to my left, the short gray-haired man, who I was able for the first time to read the Bible in his language that he could understand. His son Modric is standing behind me. As I began to talk to Jack as best I could through Ruth and started to read Bible verses to him, this group gathered around me, and it was because I was reading the words on the right side of this page, and that is Bislama. I don't know how to speak in Whitesands language yet, but I'm working on that, and I'm working on having a Bible with 4 columns that go from King James English to Bislama to Whitesands written language, and then also with a reference to the Greek Textus Receptus on the right side, so that they can see all the way back to the original words that were spoken by Jesus and the apostles. So pray for these people, pray for these teachers, pray for Keri and I, and remember that Tanna is absolutely the most interesting and I think probably the most beautiful place in the world. And I took this picture as we crossed Snake Road going back over, looking forward to the time that we can go back again. Remember that there are many things that we want in our life. There's many hopes and dreams we have. Keri and I have been doing this now for over 20 years, and both of us have realized that the things that we hoped for in our 30s are now just starting to come to pass. And sometimes it only takes 20 years for you to trust in God, read His Word, and believe His promises. And this came to full fruition on this trip. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall be soon cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and He shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Trust in the Lord and do good, so shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and He shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Thank you for the time that you've taken to watch this, and I'll be glad to show other photos as people ask, and I will see you when we have our next video in probably 12 months. Have a good day. Bye-bye.